What's up, y'all, and welcome back to the Michael Experience Podcast. I am your orator and originator, Michael, and these are my thoughts on my life, my way. So, as we continue this journey of talking about relationships, dating, and love, I want to continue this in the trajectory of the mindset because in the last two episodes, I leaned into the mental and emotional awareness and the acuity level in the mental space. And so, keeping it there, I want to talk about maturity and how it relates to time and the perception of there being an endless supply of time to date at this particular point. Now, I know some of you are saying, well, I don't feel that way. As I get older, I know that I need to find somebody if I want to find somebody, settle down, have kids if that's the thing. So, what do you mean there's an infinite amount of time? That's why I said the perception of. So, let's get into it. As I've been dating recently, the last 2 years that I've been single, and I will mention that every time just to remind you, I've seen so many different things from the men, and there are some constant themes that keep recurring, like I've mentioned in previous podcast episodes. But the other thing is just this augmentation of time where men feel like now they are pushing back the ceiling on I have to find a partner now, or there's an urgency to find a partner now. And how I explained this to one of my friends recently was that I feel like men now have taken that, 30 is the new 20, 40 is the new 30, 50 is the new 40 thing, and have applied that to being able to have endless options now because as we've gotten older, and this is women too, but as men have gotten older, they have realized that younger men, women, or whatever they're searching for are still going to be coming after them. And so they've slowed down that ideology of I need to settle down so that they can continue to play the field. And one might say that that makes it a little bit more level in terms of, getting out there, taking your time and finding the right person. And I would be inclined to agree if it weren't for the fact that men are now cycling through people as if there's just like an instant, love ramen. And love ramen is the people that are out here. And it's like I can go play with this person, throw them away, because I've used up all of their love, their kindness, compassion, and then I'll move on to the next person without any real seriousness or intention to date. Now, I'm sure people are wondering, how did you come to that conclusion? I don't know that I've heard this before, but follow me for a second. Stay with me and play with me for a second. As a man myself, right, I've noticed a wide range of men that try to date me from 22 to 62. And what I realized about that for me is to outside people, it means that I have a bunch of available options. And to those people, it's like people are coming after you every single day. But I always tell people that the illusion of options doesn't necessarily give you a choice. Just because there are people out there saying that they admire this or they're attracted to that about me doesn't mean they actually want to be with me. Now, I can contend that most of them would like to sleep with me, not even be intimate, just have sex or have the thrill or just waste some time, but to actually be with, I don't think so. And the reason why I say that, well, I know so. I know so. And the reason why I know that is because the effort and the intention behind it is just not there. Most of the men that have come into my life these last 2.5 years have never came into the situation with a life's plan for the relationship. And I know some people are thinking like, wait a minute, you're just meeting somebody, why are you thinking about all of these things? Because they are important. I can contend that a lot of people are dating for today and forget about the direction for tomorrow and the next year and the next year. Because if your goal is for a lifetime partner, you should have lifetime goals. And that is what I've been screaming at the top of my lungs to people who are saying, oh my God, that's too much. That's clingy. It's not clingy. Just like anything that you have in your life that you want to curate, that you want to continue to grow, that you want to develop and have around for a long time, you continue to build and work on it. But you start out with a plan for it. And so if you walk into a new situationship or relationship, in my opinion, saying, I want to have a husband, I want to have a wife, I want to have my lifetime partner, but you don't have lifetime goals, to me that is a great misalignment. That is a great misalignment and an extreme injustice, to both of you, because oftentimes there is a person who has already thought about what the future looks like. And you do have to plan for the future. You can't just say, well, I don't know if tomorrow's going to come or not. That's not sufficient. You're going to have to do things to live if tomorrow does come. And you are living proof at 38, 39, 24, 25 that you have progressed to the next stage, and that is probable, going into the next part of your life, tomorrow, to the next week, the next month. So you know that there is a repetitive cycle of you regenerating and living. So you're going to have to pay bills. You're going to need housing. You're going to have to curate good work relationships, and you're going to have to show some value in the love and the emotions department when you are dating someone. So I don't understand for the life of me why people forget or decide not to look at the long term, right? Yes, enjoy the moment, be present in the moment, but also be preparing for your future. But I think in this particular community, the Black LGBT community, not, let me not say the whole community because I can't speak, the Black gay male community, because that is where I'm a part of and that is what I date. I will leave it there because this I can say with certainty, that there is a large portion of us who will say these things and they sound really good, but they're very empty in nature. Very empty in nature. How do you say you want a husband, but you don't see a pathway to being a husband or acquiring a husband or keeping a husband? Because what it takes to get somebody is not the same thing that it takes to keep them. You're going to have to add a little bit more sauce to it. You're going to have to add a little bit more. And I always tell people, whatever it was that got you here, charisma, charm, good looks, a good body, a good piece of your body, amen, whatever got you here, right, it only got you through the door, and it's going to take a little bit more than that to keep you here. So whatever that inciting incident was, I'm gonna need a little more as we go on. You know what I mean? So I find that a lot of men are not doing their due diligence and not being intentional about that work. And I believe that they move on very quickly when they find someone who is challenging them deeper, who is saying, like, what do you want in the next 5 years? Heck, I don't know. Maybe in this current climate, right, in the regime that we're under, maybe they're saying to people, well, listen, 5 years might be a stretch. What do you want in the next 2 years? And then they say, well, I want to be, cohabitating, and I want to adopt a dog. Okay, so what does that look like? Right? Because how do we merge and blend our two situations? Now, the correct response for me would be, I thought about this, and this is my take. I'm prepared to move. I'm prepared to sell my house, or I'm not prepared to sell my house, but I would love if somebody moved in with me, and this is what I would take care of. And what are your thoughts? So that we can kind of iron these things out and see if we are, in alignment, if we are of the same accord or equally yoked, as they say. That's what that conversation should look like. But oftentimes I find when you start peeling beyond that first layer, pulling back that first layer and peeling back that curtain, men are getting very frustrated by you asking them those questions. And then all of a sudden you're clingy, you're too thirsty, you shouldn't even be thinking about that. We've only known each other for a couple of weeks. Well, listen, this is how you get to know if this is your partner or not. And this type of behavior depicts a level of seriousness that you should be ready to partake in if you are showing up to the table and saying that you want the same thing that I want, which is a lifetime partner, a husband, a longtime lover, whatever that verbiage is for you. You should be showing up ready to put in the same amount of work, ready to have the same conversations, ready to iron out anything that seems to be wrinkled or any potholes. We're ready to fill those in. You should come fully prepared for that. But what I'm finding in large is that when you start trying to peel back those layers and pull back the curtain, people get defensive. These men are getting defensive, and they're like, Psh, I'm not about to talk about that with you," or I don't feel like that's something we need to discuss at this point, or whatever. Like, we haven't even gotten to the cohabitation place. Why is it so hard to set out the strategy beforehand? Why? I think everything else in life you do right before you go into battle. And if you've never been into battle, okay, hopefully you're familiar with the process. If not, I don't know. I'll be a little worried about your safety in these times. But before someone goes into battle, there's a full strategy laid out. There are contingencies that are thought through. There are what ifs, there are root causes. The obstacles or enemy is identified, right? The goals and the tactics are set in motion. And then you run the playbook after you've set it out. You don't wait till you are knee deep in the trenches and then decide, let me stop for a second while it's raining, while the mud is getting a little bit thicker, and then the thunder and lightning is happening. Who knows? There might be a Hail Mary on the offense, and now I've got to switch it up again. You don't walk into something like that unprepared. So why would you think it's okay in an emotional and mental battle? And it doesn't mean that this is a negative thing, but it truly is an exchange of two people, and there are elements that are going to come in that are going to trip you up, or there are going to be things that you're going to have to work through, similar to having said strategy. There's obstacles to overcome. So if you haven't plotted that out, number one, and then even if you have plotted it out, right? So let's say you have, even if you've plotted it out, you still have to work through it with other people on the play. And that is the person that you're trying to be with. And you can't throw your hands up and get frustrated because somebody asks you something that you're not used to, or asks you something that requires a little bit more depth. And maybe it's a little bit frustrating because you don't know how to navigate the nuance, or you don't know how to navigate that particular emotion. What you do is you show up and you work through it with that person, especially if they are showing you that they are willing to do so. But what I'm seeing is that these men, instead of addressing those things head on, they be like, oh, I'm not doing this. This is too much. This is too much. This is seeming to be too difficult for you. And this is a real response that I got. I feel like this is just getting to be too much for you. And I'm like, it's not beginning to be too much for me. I'm asking you questions because I want to make sure that I understand we're on the same page. So let me go ahead and tell this story to kind of help, paint a picture. I met this guy on Facebook, somewhere within the first, I don't know, 9 months to a year of being single. And by all accounts, he seemed to be a nice guy, well established, master's degree, worked from home, but had a high six-figure job. Didn't mind telling me that he had that and his accolades and stuff. And I don't mind it, right? Now, as long as you don't just, keep regurgitating that information to me over and over again, or repeating that over and over again, I'm okay with you saying and popping your shit. I really don't care. But, I own my home in DC, and just all of this lovely thing. He had a custom car for $250,000 that he was very happy about. And so I'm like, okay, all of that sounds great. He's like, I love conversation. I look for moments. I really am just excited about, finding somebody that I can just have deeper conversations and maybe even debate sometimes. And I'm like, well, I don't know much about the debating portion. I only want to have conversations that are exchanges, whether we're having the same, point or not, or whether we're on the same accord or not, where we are trying to get there. at some point, or we just agree to disagree. Now, I'm not with the whole debating just because kind of thing. Anyway, but I let that be known. But so he seemed very communicative at first. Texts were fine, phone conversations were okay. And I'm like, okay, he seems to be a winner so far. And after maybe, I don't know, a week or 2 weeks of talking on the phone and stuff like that, we go on a date. And our first date is great. Now, he was late. I don't know what I'm gonna do about people being late, because I think every guy that is asked, well, no, 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 because there was that guy. He wasn't late. He was actually early, and I thought that I was like right on time, and he had been sitting there for a while. So kudos to him for being on time, but he was late. But he let me know he was running late. I was like, okay, no problem. I'm gonna start taking that as a red flag, though. But he showed up to the date, very, very respectful, handsome, could have used a little bit of sprucing in the apparel department, but hey, I listen here, I'll take it. So we're talking, we're having conversations. He seems a little nervous, which is fine, but we're navigating conversations. He immediately notices that this restaurant is not what I like, and he's like, hey, like there's a better restaurant down the street, let me go there. So I'm like, oh, he's very perceptive. Check. So he said he can communicate. Check. He appears to be able to communicate. Check. He seems to be receptive to my emotions and my feelings. Check. So internally I'm thinking these things. And so we go to another restaurant, and that was fine. And so that night, to just kind of speed this up a little bit, we ended up going to like three different places, I want to say. Four. No, we ended up four places. We had the initial, he took me to the better restaurant. We ended up doing like a karaoke because that's what I wanted to do. And then there was this lovely place, very, 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 like, I don't know, like cigar, well, not cigar clubbish. What is that? I don't know, like country clubbish, but it was very, very nice in there. And I know we walked in, it was very, very busy. People were there. I'm looking good. People were looking good. I'm like, oh, it's kind of ritzy. And so he tells the person at the front desk, like, hey, do you have a spot for two? And they're like, oh no, we don't, or whatever. And then he says, hold on, and he pulls out his phone and he calls somebody. And so whoever he calls comes from the back of the restaurant, and he's like, hey, I got a spot for you two up here or whatever. And so I'm like, well, now wait a minute. Now you got connections down to the country club. So he's connected, check. A man of means, check. You know what I mean? A classy gentleman of distinction, check. So in my mind, I'm like, oh wow, this is pretty amazing. And we've had a wonderful night so far. He's gone with the flow. So we appear to be having just an amazing date. And when we left that night, it was kind of like, one of those words like, God, I wish we could do a little bit more. But I'm like, it's late. I got things to do. You have things to do. And so we left each other that particular night. We continued conversing on the phone and things like that. We ran into the first issue when I proposed that he meet me to go to this new restaurant I had found. Now there was no pre-planning involved. I think it was a Friday. It was a Friday afternoon, or Friday evening, should I say, or Saturday evening. And so I just had randomly found this restaurant. And I was like, I wonder if he would want to go with me. And so I sent him, the link to the restaurant, and I said, hey, look at this and see if this is something you would like to do. And he looks at the thing and he says, oh, I think I've heard of this place. And so he's like, well, how far is it from you? And I'm like, it's 30 minutes or something like that. He said, okay, so it's about that for me too. And he's like, so when are you trying to go? And I said, well, today, if you're free. If not, we can just do it another day or whatnot. So he's like, I got to finish up some things, blase, blase. I'm like, okay, well, just let me know. Now, I didn't make a big deal about him not reaching out to me later that day. And I mean, he reached out, but he didn't reach out about the restaurant. But by the time I had heard from him, the restaurant was closed anyway. So I didn't really think anything of it. So a few days go by, and he's in his feelings. And so instead of telling me he's in his feelings, like, we're having these kind of rough text messages back and forth where you gotta where you're texting, but then you feel like you're kind of pulling teeth to get a response. And so I sent him like voice notes, like, "Hey, like, what's going on? Like, I feel like something is off. So did something happen? Like, are you okay?" That kind of thing. And so then he responds and he says to me that he really doesn't appreciate it when somebody initiates something and then doesn't follow through with it. So in my mind, I'm immediately like, what are you talking about? And so I said, well, what is this about? I was like, I don't know what I initiated or and didn't follow through with. I'm not sure what it is. He said, you asked me to go to a restaurant with you, and I told you that I didn't know if I could make it. And I didn't get any follow up from you, like, okay, let's reschedule for another day, or any indication that you still wanted to go, or just anything. And he's like, I'm all about both people making plans. I don't always want to be the person to make plans. And I said, okay. I said, so let me be very clear about what we're talking about. I said, because you and I are still getting to know each other, and you did ask me to go on a date with you. I said you did. We came up with all of the activities together. I said we even went to several places, so that to me was a collaborative effort. I said, so that's the way that I'm looking at it. Yes, I did ask you to go to a restaurant over the weekend. However, you told me that you didn't know if you would be able to do it. You had some things you need to do and you would let me know. I said, however, you did not let me know. So, am I to understand that now you're upset with me because I didn't ask you about that when you never responded to begin with? And he was like, it's not about that. It's about having somebody that also is okay with making plans and also is forward enough to make plans in a situation. I don't want to be the only one making plans. And so I'm miffed even now thinking about it, because I remember just being perplexed, and I really didn't know what to say. And so I think at that point, because we were sending voice notes back and forth, I said, you know what, just call me so that we can really understand what's happening, because I'm a little bit confused about how this is playing out in your mind. And so he calls me and he begins talking. He's saying the same thing that he said in the voice note. And he's just saying, I just would think that, anybody would just circle back to the conversation. That's all. And maybe that's just me. And so in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, I don't do passive aggressive. And I'm not just thinking that. I said, well, listen, I don't do passive aggressive. So I would do this or that. We are two different people and we view the world completely differently. So I don't want to do this passive aggressive thing with you. However, I respect the fact that you let me know that if I were to present something to you and for whatever reason it falls by the wayside, you would like me to then recommunicate to you. I said, I fully understand that and I will accept it. I said, however, I'm going to ask you to do the same thing because I believe in reciprocity. So if you tell me that you are going to think about it or you're going to come back to it, I need you to then come back to it, and maybe things like this won't happen. So I'm not angry with you about this conversation. I just wanted to be very clear about what it is that you were asking so that I could make sure that either I wanted to move forward in that direction or not. So that was the first thing that happened in the communication. And I kind of just took that away as like a mental note of like, I don't understand what is going on here. Ladies and gentlemen, and they, them, I then asked him if he would like to go to a movie. And there are these really nice theaters, and I had not been to any of them when I was in Baltimore at the time, but there was one in DC too as well, or whatever. I didn't mind which one we went to, and so not long after that, I maybe a couple of days after that, I said, hey, there's this movie coming out. Like, are you a movie buff? I love watching movies. Like, that is my favorite pastime. He's like, oh yeah, oh my god, I would love to go to that movie. I'm like, great. So I was like, what day works best for you? I said, I want to make sure that, I pick a day that works best for us. He picked like a Tuesday or something. And I was like, okay, what time you want to do? Like 7? That give you enough time to do your calls and whatever else you have to do. He's like, yeah. So it was like 7:30 ish, somewhere in that realm. And I said, okay, well, I'll go ahead and buy the tickets or whatnot. That way everything is set in stone. And then we'll go see the movie. And so that would have been a date for us. However, however, the day of the date comes. Now we've talked in between then, and I actually went to his house in between then. So I don't want to make it seem like there was just this big long gap. Let me add the proper context. Somewhere within that, because it was like a week away at this point. It was going to the movie was about a week away, but this conversation we had was a couple of days after to set the movie date, if that makes sense. So a couple of days after the disagreement or the misunderstanding, we set the date for the movie, but the date of the movie was about a week off from that. Hopefully that timeline makes sense. So in between there, I did go to his house. He wanted me to come over. He's like, I just want to chill. I'm a little stressed. We can have wine. I'll do a charcuterie, whatever. I'm like, okay, fine, whatever. I went over to his house. That's a whole nother conversation for a completely different show. But let's fast forward to the day of the movie. So the day of the movie, he's texting. We're texting each other. He calls me maybe 2 hours before the movies, and he's sounding very miserable. And I'm like, "Are you okay?" And he's like, "Yeah, I think I just might have caught the flu or something." And I'm thinking to myself, like, "Oh no, you caught the flu." Now, part of me is like, how convenient did you catch the flu that you've caught the flu on date night? But also, I didn't know that you were feeling sick up until this point. So in my mind, I'm like, here we go with the craziness. And so he tells me he has the flu or whatever. He does sound kind of bad, but we done all called out of work before and said we was sick. At least I know I have. Not recently, in recent years, but early on I would. And I could fake being sick. I don't know, like Angela Bassett be doing in the movies, real dramatic. Like, anyway, we're gonna move forward. I was like, well, do you still want to go to the movie tonight, or do you want to, rain check? And he was like, no, no, I'm still going to go because I told you I was going to go and whatnot. I'm like, mm-hmm. Now, the reason why you telling me you're going to go ahead and go is because you don't want to have another spat like we did. And you didn't want me to have to set you straight again. Okay. Cause that's what was going to happen. So I'm like, okay, whatever. If you want to go, then we can go. I was like, but if you really don't feel like you're up to it, then we don't have to go. And so he was like, I think I'll be all right or whatever. He was like, but let me go and take my whatever he was taking for it. And, I'll talk to you in a little bit. Mind you guys, it's 2 hours or so before the movie. So finally, he texts me as it's nearing time for me to walk out of the door because I have to drive probably 30, 40 minutes into DC to the movie theater. He says, hey, can we go ahead and he's texting me. He says, hey, can we go ahead and rain check? Like, I'm feeling tired, really groggy now. And I'm like, oh, okay. I was like, yeah, no problem. And that's why I asked if you wanted to or whatever. I was like, do you want me to bring you some soup? Do you want me to bring you? He's like, no, no, I'm just gonna, go to sleep and whatnot. So I'm like, okay, whatever. You're gonna go to sleep. Who am I to, stand in the way of you healing and things like that? So that happens. A couple of days go by. We're talking within this time frame, whatever, but a couple of days are going by, and so at some point, so that was the date was supposed to be Tuesday. So a couple of days go by, weekend comes and stuff like that, and so I call him. I was being distant with him, and I just was like, you know what? I'm not even going to reach out. I think there was like a day or two. I was like, I'm not even going to reach out. So if we don't talk, we just won't talk. And so he's like, hey, are you okay? Da 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 da. And so I call him, and I'm like, you know, good afternoon. How you doing? And he's like, oh yeah, I'm doing okay. Da 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 da. I'm out with my friends. Da 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 da. And I immediately thought to myself, for a person that just over a week ago wanted me to be accountable to rescheduling something, you know, this person that checked out on the date that wanted to rain check has not rescheduled as well. And on top of that, you're out with your friends. So I'm on the phone. I'm like, oh, okay, well, have a good good time with your friends. You guys enjoy your evening or whatever, and I'll just talk to you some other time. And so and I'm just very even like this. I'm like, okay, well, you're out with your friends. You go ahead and have a great night. You go, whatever. So he's like texting me, like, what's wrong with you? Like, you've been like a little bit distant lately. And then when we talked on the phone, you seemed very short. And I said, well, I don't want to interrupt your day. I don't want to, take anything away from your day. So, I just want you to have a good time with your friends or whatever, and then you can just get back to me when you're free. So he's like, oh, okay. He goes on about his day with his friends. The next day, he wants to talk and stuff like that. And then he's wanting to bring it back up. So I'm like, are you just looking for a rise out of me? Like, are you really looking for a rise out of me? Now, you guys, I'm irritated because for you to give me all of that stink about a week or so ago at this point, now you are the person that's in the seat and you haven't done what you said that you were going to do. So you want to hold me accountable but not be accountable. Absolutely not. We don't do that around here. We don't do double standards around here. So he wants to continue to talk about, why he feels like I was this and why are you that way or whatever. And I said, so you and I had a conversation. You and I had a conversation and you wanted me to be accountable to rescheduling because I put it on the table and you wanted me to circle back. I said, and we had a whole discussion about that being reciprocal. You would do the same thing, and then that way we wouldn't end up in a situation. I said, yeah, I haven't heard you mention rescheduling our movie date. I was like, I haven't heard you mention it at all. I was like, and I'm not going to because you canceled and rain check because you said you were feeling bad. I was like, but you managed to do whatever else you had to do. So for me, I'm just sitting over here like, are we just, applying the rules to me or what does that look like? And so he's like, well, I understand what I said. And it we did have that conversation. So I apologize that I did not get back to you. I should have gotten back to you. But that shouldn't be a reason for you to act funny towards me. And I said, I wasn't acting funny towards you. He's like, well, me and you were talking and you weren't being as, you weren't being as like into it as you normally would. So, ladies and gentlemen, in my mind, I'm thinking this. If you wanted to talk to me, you could have. If you wanted to spend time with me, you could have. I didn't curse you. I didn't pull you up on charges like you tried to do me about the one restaurant or whatnot, and about how you want to be with somebody who takes initiative and all that stuff. I didn't charge you up. All I did was like, okay, you haven't really said anything to me. Let me just back up. Let me meet you where you at. And so all of a sudden now that we're giving fair exchange, you feel like it's a robbery. And we all know fair exchange ain't no robbery. So I'm just like, okay, either this person doesn't really understand how communication works or doesn't understand communication in action, but there is a deficit here. And so this conversation turned into a whole back and forth about me having an attitude. And he's like, I just feel like you have an attitude when you don't get your way. And I said, how do I have an attitude when I don't get my way? Because like you're being short in the text messages and now you're telling me like that you were backing up because I didn't say anything to you. You damn right. You are damn right. I'm not going to chase you. If I ask to spend time with you one time, to me that is me being very very generous about it, okay? That is the freebie. If I ask you twice, if I have to ask you twice, that's begging to me. And a third time just won't happen. It just won't happen. Okay, unless you got a check with my name on it and I need to pick it up and cash it, okay, near the first. But if that isn't the circumstance, I'm not going to chase you, sir. And I'm not going to pretend to be excited to talk to you after you have withdrawn or you have decided that you were going to give me low effort. I'm not going to be excited in that. That is just crazy to me. And so we had that whole exchange, and I said, well, listen, if somebody not agreeing with you means they have an attitude, then so be it. I said, I'm not trying to change your mind, and I'm honestly not interested in having any more conversation about it. I said, that's just what it is for me. I'm not going to discuss that. I'm not. The root of the issue was you asked for something that you yourself wasn't willing to give, and then when I called you out on it in a nice way, honestly in my opinion, you decided you couldn't handle it and you wanted to flip the script. Absolutely not. So ladies and gentlemen, some more time goes on, the texting and the phone calls get a little shaky. So I do what I do again. I back up off of it because I'm not going to beg you for anything and I am not going to fight you for your healing. I'm not. And so I just backed up off of it or whatever. And I get a phone call randomly and he's out and he's trying to talk to me. And I was like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm out with my friends and stuff like that, but I just wanted to call and whatever. I said, oh, okay. He's like, are you good? I said, I'm good, but just call me when you actually can talk as opposed to when you're around a bunch of people. Like, just call me when you can talk. Like, you don't have to call me while you're in a crowded space. Like, that's crazy. So after that, he hangs up and he proceeds to text some more of the same kind of bull crap. And I'm like, oh my God, you're being short with me. And I'm like, listen, I can't hear you. Your restaurant was very loud, but if you want to talk to me, call me when you actually have time. So now I have an attitude again. I don't have an attitude, ladies and gentlemen, and they, them. But to him, he's saying, see, this is what I'm talking about. You have attitude because it's not your way. And I'm just bewildered again and perplexed because why would you expect me to be excited about talking to you and me and you haven't had really any good or deep or intimate conversation in days? We've talked, but it hasn't been very deep in days. And then you call me while you're out, and all I hear is plates clanking, people talking, laughing. I can barely hear you. And I say to you, call me when you have time. And now I have an attitude again. And so he's texting me this stuff. And so I sent him a voice note at this point. I said, listen, I'm not going to go back and forth with you today about having an attitude. I said, I really am not in the space for it. I said, but if you want to have a bigger conversation about why there's a disconnect or why something is happening, call me tomorrow or call me the next day. I'll be free for the next 2 days. But you let me know when you want to talk because I'm not going to do this back and forth over the phone. So I think he took a day and then he called me. And when he called me, I was out. I was out at a bar. And he goes, hey, I know we talked the other day, but like, is now a good time to talk? And I said, well, I'm actually out. I was like, I'm actually out right now. And he was like, well, can we just talk for a minute? Like, is it okay? Like, can you just step to the side for a minute just to talk? Because I don't want us to have this whatever. So I'm like, oh my God. So I go out on the balcony where it is less noisy and I say, okay, what would you like to talk about? And he said, well, the other day when we were on the phone, it sounded like something was wrong. And so I figured we could go back and have a conversation because you said you wanted to have a conversation. And I said, well, no, you called me while you were in a busy establishment. And I told you, you can call me when you are free. So I was telling you, just like, if you want to talk to me, call me when you are free. And so he's at this point saying, well, I just feel like there's a bigger issue that is going on, and like you be having your feelings and your attitudes or whatever, so I don't want to be caught up in that, and this just feels like it's a bigger problem for you. And he said a couple of other things, but he kept saying, I mean, and I'm not saying that I have a problem, but it seems like it's more of a problem for you, and I don't want you to feel that way. So, you guys, I couldn't even really deal with what he was saying because I'm like, you have perpetuated and created all of the dissension and the mis communication within this. And the only thing I've done is try to get clarity out of you and have you do it in a way that we both can try to understand what's happening. And so now we're doing this thing where we want to flip the script back on me. And he goes, so I mean, I don't know what we do at this point. And I said, well, you know what? I think that it is okay that we go our separate ways. I said, I really do think that it is okay. And he was like, yeah, I'm thinking, maybe we could be friends. I said, probably not. I was like, but I do agree that we can go our separate ways. So it has been very interesting spending time with you. And I'm going to go back in here and finish my drinks. Have a good day. And I got off the phone with him and I left it at that. But, ladies and gentlemen, and they, them, when I tell you, it is so important that you come into a situation with a plan. It is very, very important that you come into this situation with a plan, ready to do the work in the event that somebody is asking of you, requiring of you, or whatever it may be. Now, I brought this gentleman up because the communication with this particular situation was the problem, right? He wasn't able to emotionally, regulate, and he wasn't able to articulate his feelings in real time, and or he wasn't able to accept self accountability for the things that he was requiring of his partner. And so when it got to be too much, and when I challenged him in his ways of thinking, then all of a sudden I became the problem. I became the aggressor, or the person that initiated the issue, and that is just not the case. And so what was easier for him to do in that moment was to check out, and I was fully okay with him checking out. But again, that speaks to the bigger issue that I brought up earlier, is that when somebody is trying to peel back the layers, when somebody is trying to go deeper than surface, when it's something you haven't been confronted before, the men, that when it's something they haven't been confronted with before, or they've not had to dive into before, it becomes this thing like, oh, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. But I will say this: at 45 years old, I'm not 40 yet. I'm 38. I'm almost 40. At 45, I believe he was 45. How much time do you think you have left to play this game, this gaslighting, this passive aggressive communication game? How much longer do you think you have to play that game? Not much longer, but the fact that you are 45 and you've been single for quite a bit. I couldn't remember how many years he had been single, but this small glimpse, this small pinhole into how he was maneuvering, and the way his emotions were just, I kind of all over the place, it really helped me understand like why that is. And it is because you keep meeting people, and you keep saying you want these things, and you keep presenting yourself as this real well-rounded person, but you are not ready to do the work, and you really don't have any plans on doing the work. Because if you did, you would know that communication is how two people sit down and plan a strategy and plot a course and get to know each other. And you would know that sometimes it is uncomfortable. I can only imagine if I ask things about his childhood. That's a sensitive soft spot for all of us. Or religion, or we get into politics and we have differing opinions on politics. How would those conversations go? You'd check right on out, wouldn't you? And you would say, you know what, I'm not doing this. I'm gonna go over here and get somebody else. And you'll go and repeat that cycle with somebody else again and again and again, running from communication, running from depth, running from clarity, and running from romanticism, or love. You're ultimately running from the thing that you say that you want. But I believe that there is something in that particular type of man's mind that says, you know what, I'm gonna go get me another one, and I'll get me another one, and I'll get me another one. And that's how you end up 45, 50, 55, blaming everybody else for why you can't get into a relationship. And so maturity and time don't always equal growth and development. It really does not. And if somebody wants to challenge me on that, I fully welcome it. But I believe that some people are still stunted in their emotional, in their romantic, in their mental capabilities that they were in high school, when maybe you fell in love for the first time and got your heart broken, or when the first person talked to you in a way that you didn't understand, and instead of dealing with it, you ran away, or you suppress things for so long, and that is just what you do, or you've avoided for so long from day one that that is what you do. But at some point, you have to realize and reassess, and then reposition yourself. If you are still running from 20 to 25, 25 to 30, 30 to 35, 35 to 40, 40 to, if you are still running from the same things, you're going to eventually run out of time. You are going to eventually run out of time, because the other thing I know is that our bodies will remind us at some point that we can't continue to do the things that we once did, or even, and if you can still do it, you won't be able to do it at the same level. So if you are thinking that you're going to get with somebody and you're going to be able to do all of these exciting and fun things, and you're going to scale Mount Everest, and you're going to have sex 4 to 5 times a day and all of that stuff, time is going to sit you down. If you're saying, I want to start a family, I want to do, I want to build, I want to build, I want to build, all of that stuff takes time. If you keep wasting time, you're going to run out of it. So at 45, right, you need to have a strategy for love and relationships that spans 45 to 50. And if you can go 10 years, go 10 years. But you need to have in your mind what that looks like, because once you get into a relationship, that's a different time clock, baby. You're 45 and you come with all you've known up to 45, okay? All that you've accumulated up to 45. And then that person, wherever they are, they come to the situation with that. And then the clock starts for you both to figure out how it is that you're going to work well together. And I'm here to tell you, those first few months you get together, you're going to love everything that you love about the person. Oh, you're going to love everything. Oh my God, those pretty feet, those pretty lips, those pretty eyes, those pretty hands. Oh my God, I love, we spend every weekend together. Oh my God, we be on the phone all night. Oh my God, whatever it is that you love about somebody in the beginning. Oh my God, we're playing the video game. You're going to love that for maybe 3. And if you're lucky, 6 months, depending on the frequency that you guys are together. I believe the more time you spend together, the shorter that duration will be. So if y'all spend every waking moment, minute talking, sitting together, rubbing on each other, loving on each other, whatever you're doing, you might only get the 3 months, okay? But if you span it out because you got jobs and you travel and you got other things going on, you might get 6. And then the rough part happens, where you remove the rose colored glasses, and the love lace has finally gotten out of your system, and you're like, wait a minute, okay, we did all the fun, the exciting, and the stuff that gets my serotonin going. We've done all that stuff, but wait a minute, now I'm in this in between. I'm in this quiet space, and what is that? Why is my heart not beating out of my chest like it was? Like, I still think they are fine, I still enjoy being with them, but why is that anxious and excitement not there anymore? And here's the thing, it's just like anything else we have in our lives. When we first get it, we didn't have many TVs in our lives, flat screen or otherwise. But when we buy that new TV and set it up, baby, we love that thing, don't it? It's the best thing we ever watched a TV show, YouTube, or Instagram video on. Boy, it'd be the best thing smoking at the buttons. Oh, the buttons are so pretty. And then, just like the rest of the TVs we had, we're like, okay, yeah, it's just another TV in the house. We still love it, but it's like, dang, I had the TV in the house or whatever. The initial, you know, excitement has just worn off. And that's when you have to do the deeper things. Now, TV, doesn't have the depth and the emotion and the the interpersonal stuff that relationships do. So follow me. We're here with it or whatever. It's still important to you, but you got to figure out what else you can do with it, okay? And you learn that the TV got some functions on it. I ain't know I can cast from my phone. You know what I mean? And wait a minute, this thing got a whole new, thing I can watch movies on. So you figure out stuff with the TV. You figure out some things along the way. I didn't know I could, you know. But relationships are a little bit deeper and a little bit more expansive in what you have to do, because then you're not thinking about the fun things and that get your adrenaline and serotonin pushing. Now it's the serious thing of figuring out. I was excited. I felt like that was a part of love, but here I am now in the stillness and in the quietness, and I'm not turned off and I'm not disinterested, but it feels different. And in that is, you know, in this space, you're truly you're beginning to experience a level of peace, really, because anxiousness and that I can't wait to get back to him is what you're doing at first. You're getting that dopamine hit. But in the stillness, now you are like, what is this? And in that stillness is where you should be really exploring who that person is. And so you find out not just what makes them laugh, what make laughs and makes them giggle, or what makes them open up their legs or pull their pants down and drop them to their ankles, because you figure that out pretty quickly. The body will help you with that real quick, but the mind is a little bit different. It'll take you through some things, won't it? It'll have you thinking things are true that are not there, and then the otherwise as well. You're just making up shit, okay? Rose-colored glasses and love laced, okay? But in that moment is where you have to decide, do I have enough with this person, enough chemistry, enough common goals to go deeper? And that's where you have to sift through the love language truly, and you have to sift through the mental acuity and all of the things that has led that person from day one to this day. That's when you start digging deeper and figuring out those moments, the things that have caused trauma, the things that have caused sadness in their lives, the thing that gets this person, in that in that space of what do I do? You know what I mean? When that person is vulnerable enough to be like, I am in this unknown space and I am going to be vulnerable enough to tell you that I am here. It's the thing that you don't get at the beginning. So I guess what I'm saying is all the things that people are afraid to say or feel like they shouldn't say, feel like they shouldn't express, shouldn't do in the beginning is what in this space you should be figuring out. All of that I was afraid to say, I was too hesitant because I thought you were going to react this way. I thought that would be the end of us. Like that is when you start to dispel and denounce those things and figure out if there's something that can truly take you guys off course. But you are not going to get to that part if you can't get past that initial communication barrier and feeling like someone going deeper with you, asking, exploratory questions, people just trying to understand you, because that's what you do when you're dating. You will never get to this deeper, more intimate phase if you can't master the surface level stuff. And you don't have an infinite amount of time, regardless of what you think and how many options you believe you have. That peaceful, quiet space where you're trying to figure it out is the place that you go to grow and to learn. And I love how Craig the Writer Stewart says relationships are the place where you go to grow and to learn. That peaceful, quiet space that you're unsure of because the dopamine and stuff is worn off, that is the place you go to with your new partner to grow and to learn. And if you're not willing to grow and learn in that space, then you probably should just leave. You should probably leave. Okay? So, this has been the Michael Experience podcast. Next episode, we will dive deeper into the rose colored and love laced analogy. And so, I say rose colored as in rose colored glasses. I say love laced as in sometimes you can be laced with different things to make you feel a certain way. And I think love definitely does that to a lot of us, and it has us feeling this intense high, and it has us doing things that we never thought we would do, and oftentimes it's very prematurely. And then you put that with the rose colored glasses, and boy, are you not able to see the things that you really should see, like the red flags that I feel like I should have seen in one of my situationships recently. So I hope you guys enjoy listening today. And if you have a situation that you're thinking of and that you want to relate to, please drop it down in the comment section and we can talk amongst ourselves. But until next time, go love on yourself before you can love on somebody else. And y'all have a good one. Peace and love, y'all. Bye.